On this episode of Sustainable Horizons,
7 billion acres burned.
We need to cut down trees to some capacity in a sustainable manner.
My smoke alarm went off at one point.
We're going to need inventions to keep us safer inside. Guess what?
What?
We're back.
Sweet. This episode is about smoky summers. It's been something that I think pretty much the entire US, or at least northern US, experienced last year in Europe. Little fun facts. In 2023, Minneapolis had 21 air quality alerts spanning 52 days pertaining to smoke and breathing issues. So why is this happening? 16 of them were from wildfires that were happening all the way over in British Columbia on the west coast of Canada, as well as California on the west coast. So in British Columbia, they experienced a particularly severe season with a record-breaking 7 billion acres burned. Additionally, California actually had like a good season in regards to wildfires, in the sense that they had 325,000 acres burned, which is down from their 5-year average of 1.7 million.
That's a really good year for them then.
Last summer was honestly jarring. I thought it was interesting because a lot of people are like, oh, this is kind of bad. We don't really have wildfires that much here in Minnesota. We're used to hearing about it on the West Coast, but it was like, oh, this isn't just a them thing anymore.
I think this is a topic where a lot of people start to understand the ramifications of like how widespread climate change and natural disasters can reach. Wildfires being so easily carried on winds that I remember last summer, I worked a job outside. I was serving. I was suffering. And I'm a person, I don't have asthma. I have really strong lungs. I'm a very generally healthy person. I could not get through a conversation with a table outside without coughing up a lung. My throat would be so dry and affected, and my lungs so unhappy with like being outside and breathing. I'm pretty sure I went home early one day because I literally couldn't talk to anybody without coughing. And they're like, well, can't really work if you can't talk to people. And I just hunkered down inside and drank a bunch of water. And like, it was weeks of feeling this way. And like you said, 52 days basically in a row of just this extreme air quality that we were seeing. We'd gotten it a few times, but very unusual for how long extended it was. And some of the apocalyptic pictures coming out of it too were kind of crazy, especially like everybody's seen the New York one. Like that was straight out of Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, pick your dystopian movie and it looked like that.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I'm a person who likes to have their windows open like all summer. Basically, the second it's above 32 degrees, I have them open. My smoke alarm went off at one point.
Actually, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that much detectable wild. It's weird. We've been so disconnected from it in our very like humid and wet summers here in Minnesota. And last summer we were definitely a lot more dry because of the El Nino season. But that's just, exacerbated every other problem across the nation that does deal with wildfires and across the continent dealing with wildfires. But wildfires on the West Coast and the dry regions have been commonplace and kind of considered normal for like a really long time, which is, we always get the reports on, the world news or the nation news and things like that. So, they're going on and you definitely feel bad and, some years are worse than others. But the fact that it happens so frequently may seem jarring, but there's also the saying, and this is one thing I really can align with Trump on, which is interesting, but he says like we need wildfires, like we need to cut down trees to some capacity in a sustainable manner to reduce wildfires. That or they're just going to run wild. And that's why sustainably managed forests are actually better for everybody involved, because then everybody living nearby doesn't have to worry about all that underbrush just being tinder on these flames as they're crawling through. So the one area I could kind of agree with him on happened to be that. Everybody was like, oh, no, he's talking about deforestation. I was like, actually, what he's saying is totally right. Yeah, but generally, these ramifications of wildfires and homes destroyed and places people kind of misplaced or relocated because of it tend to stay in the region. So California gets a lot of that. You hear about that. In Canada, same thing. They get a lot of wildfires up there.
These are normal climate patterns, like having forest fires, and that is a normal climate pattern. But the issue is to the level that they're starting to occur and the frequency.
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of not having well-managed forests. So you think of like national parks can kind of sometimes be an issue if there is no logging that's allowed to go on in these parks. Like, obviously you're not clear cutting things, but things need to be cleared out, and the national park system often doesn't have the resources to send a crew in over the millions of acres a national park may be to make sure that these are well maintained and aren't just going to go up in flames the second it gets dry and there's a lightning storm. Last summer was a wild ride. I think between the photos, feeling the effects as a very healthy young individual, I can't even imagine the people with asthma and just general health issues. Like, you can't go outside. There's nothing you can do. Your car can't filter it out enough. It still smelled like a bonfire everywhere. I mean, did enjoy the bonfire smell a little bit because I enjoy that. But
see, I hate that smell.
Yeah, you get too much of that, and with too many negative consequences, suddenly I don't care for it. You know, I don't want to smell bonfire anymore because it's more of a trauma response or trigger than anything. Last year, New York was covered in smoke. We saw those iconic photos. North of New York, in Canada, there was a wildfire that lasted from June 1st or July 23rd. So damn near 2 months this fire was burning. It eventually ended up burning 18.4 million hectares, which is roughly the area the size of North Dakota. And oftentimes, Canadian wildfires are let to just burn because they tend to be burning in regions, in areas that are uninhabited by people. So there is no harm in letting them burn, and it's kind of a natural thing. It's not like somebody started a fire out there on accident. It was lightning strikes and storms that usually cause these to happen. So when they do start roaring, they just let them go because it's nature's course. And then next year, it's not going to be as bad in that area because there's nothing to burn anymore. And that's how trees have protection against wildfire too. So this 18.4 million hectares burned for 53 days. And I think a lot of the smoke that we ended up getting came from these in British Columbia and the West Coast. But this fire specifically actually made its way across the Atlantic and into Europe. And they dealt with this too. So on top of the record-breaking heat waves I'm sure they also had to deal with the wildfires from literally around the globe. It's not even something that stays within a nation, and it doesn't contain itself within a border. It really shows how globally connected we are across this whole problem of climate change. And if you're interested in seeing the map, I found one. We'll put it in the comments or the description down below, but a map that kind of shows from NASA's view where the fire was and how it spread over those 53 days, which is kind of interesting. I guess you don't really understand the full size, one, of Canada and how much is uninhabited in Canada. A lot of their population just sits right on the border near the U.S. border. When it gets north of that, they just let it burn.
Well, and to your point of it reaching Europe, I kind of felt like last summer was a sort of blessing in disguise, because even like the most conservative, anti-global warming's a liberal conspiracy to make Republicans look whatever it is. I heard from a lot of people who've always been so against global warming come to me like, maybe you're not wrong. I'm like, Like, it's almost as if this is what scientists have been warning us about for decades. Because, yeah, we're not used to this. And like, to your examples, another one for me was, I'm a big runner. It's unhealthy to go outside and run in that. Like, you're doing more harm than good by exercising outside in that. And so like it's like I have to suffer through the winters of the freezing cold, and I love being able to go outside in the summers, but like, is this just going to be the majority of summers now? To your point of last year being an El Nino year, again, relatively normal climate pattern. that exacerbated things. But I mean, this is global warming. This is what people have been saying will happen, and it's happening. The MPCA, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, is projecting that we're going to be down from that 21 air quality alerts down to 7. We're already 1 down. And those are just projections. They're hard to actually like nail down. But I mean, do you remember a single day of our childhood that was smoky like it was even one of those air quality alerts last year? Because I don't. And now this is just the new normal.
I remember sunsets. So not to the level of like smelling it in the air necessarily. I don't remember that. But I remember sunsets and sunrises being so insanely orange and red and super pretty. And my parents explaining like that is the wildfires out west or in Canada or wherever they happen to be that year. That's causing smoke in the atmosphere. It's kind of giving that effect to the sun. So I do remember that being a thing. And it has been a thing, but not to that level as, last year was. And we'll likely see again in the next 4 years when another El Nino comes through.
So I don't know. I guess my final message is buckle up and let's actually start doing something about this, because I think we all agreed that sucked.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is like that we're not going to be able to fix that one. Like that path is already set forth.
That ball's already rolling down the hill.
Yeah, that one we can't catch and push it back up. So it's like, yeah, how do we combat that? I think it's, air filter. I got one last year. Helped a ton in my home. Definitely desperately need to get a new filter before summer. It's kind of summer already, but yeah, those things that you got to look out for your own health now too. It's not just, oh, I can't believe in it. It's like, well, okay, you don't have to believe in climate change, but like we're going to have to start doing something about it, whether you believe in it or not, because these are going to continue to happen, and we're going to need inventions to keep us safer inside and outside eventually too. Sometimes you need the apocalyptic doom to get people rolling on a solution.
On that fun note, until next time.